So thank you all for registering and attending for today's session on program management. We have some great content to get through today and discussions with our panel. So just to jump into the theme for today, it's really around where we're at in terms of the impacts to business and the economy given the COVID recession and many of the impacts that have faced many issues. And then what that has meant for the IT strategies at organizations around the country, the shift to digital and the focus on initiatives, and then how program management is a key part of delivering on those initiatives that have been prioritized at the strategic level, and how we manage upwards and downwards for effective programs. So there's some of the themes we'll be exploring today. So if we just click through to do a bit of a housekeeping. For those new to GoTo, you can submit questions in the question pane just by expanding out or clicking the button there you see in the screenshot. You can also see some of the slides for download, and if you do have any technical difficulties, you can also just click the support button there or visit the website. If you could stick around just to the end, you'll get a post-session email as well, and presentation slides will be in that. This is being recorded, so you can reflect back on our great content after this discussion if you like. And also there'll be a little feedback survey after this, so that should pop up on your screens at the end of the webinar. So without further ado, and for those that haven't seen our previous webinars, this is actually topic 3 of our series on IT cost optimization. So in that email that will be sent out after this webinar, you will have links to the BDO website, which has the content and recordings from our previous webinars for number 1 and number 2 there. So do feel free to check out that content if this series is of interest to you. Kamal has been part of them, and some great materials there and takeaways for everyone. Great. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel here today, Tim, Andrew, and Kamal. My name is Ryan. I'm part of the tech advisory team in BDO Sydney. With me is Tim, who is our partner in the BDO Melbourne consulting team. Tim has particular expertise in large transformation and capital projects, and works with private sector organisations to improve financial performance, as well as government agencies on policy development and program planning and delivery. So thank you, Tim, for joining today. As well, we have Andrew McFarlane. Andrew is a partner in our BDO Sydney corporate finance team. His focus in corporate finance is specifically on acquisitions, divestments, mergers and demergers, as well as strategy development. And prior BDO, he was many years at Fairfax Media as GM of corporate strategy. And Kamal is a partner in BDO Sydney technology advisory team as well. And Kamal's expertise lies across performance improvement, technology-led business transformations, advanced analytics, and emerging tech. He works with companies locally and globally across strategy, operations, systems, and analytics. So welcome, Kamal. So as I mentioned before, the theme for today's discussion is around program management, given the context we're in. And we've broken that into 3 topics, which is around program strategy, then digital as a priority, as we see a lot of initiatives coming out of strategic reviews, and then at a program level, how to ensure cost and effectiveness in the delivery of those initiatives. So they're the 3 topics we'll be discussing, and looking forward to hearing all the diverse views from our panel today. So to kick things off, Andy, I think we're going to get your views on what the state of where we are in the economy, what the themes you're seeing at a strategic level when it comes to the prioritization of key technology programs, and just your insights from clients and activities at the moment.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for inviting me along this afternoon, and hi everybody out there. So yeah, my kind of role here at BDO is kind of M&A partner. So there'll be certain kind of built on kind of or angle on what I'm saying here. But I think in general, over the last kind of 5-6 months, what I've probably observed is a real acceleration in thinking around kind of digital transformation, and also getting very crisper on what the actual definition of digital is. I think it's a kind of a term that gets bounded around quite a lot, very freely. But I think over the last couple of months has definitely exercised people's minds as to what digital really is. I suppose one observation that we've seen over this period is, I think the initial phase where COVID hit, people went immediately into a kind of cost reduction. Let's minimize cash burn. What are the ways that we can actually use technology to drive greater cost efficiencies? I think people managed to kind of steady the ship, and after that kind of phase one period, then actually started thinking, actually seeing what the crisis was actually doing to business models. And as has been pretty clear in certain industries, certain business models have become very, very challenged. And I think people have certainly turned their mind strategically to how do we adapt our business model through kind of digital transformation to kind of either kind of take a leap ahead of kind of competitors, or actually manage to avoid disruption of themselves. And that may be in the shape of protecting market share, kind of looking for kind of different revenue opportunities, etc. So I think there's definitely been two phases kind of through kind of the last few months. I think the other thing that we've probably seen is kind of a lot of the CFOs we've been talking to is making sure that they're looking at digital transformation not from just the finance function, but also very kind of cross-functionally, and looking at the organization more holistically. And I think that's where the greatest value extraction is going to be, in seeing how the kind of sum of the parts comes together through kind of transforming each of the different aspects, whether it's marketing, customer service, finance, kind of supply chain, etc. And I think the last point that strategically that's become very apparent is the way that people perceive and have become very customer focused and customer centric. I think the way that people need to look at digital transformation is ultimately, is it bringing benefit to the end customer? I think a lot of people get caught up in the process aspect, but don't actually go to who's our end customer and how we are either going to protect or grow kind of market share. So I mean, those probably be kind of some of the key things we've observed.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think it's really interesting how it's certainly brought forward a lot of these initiatives on the digital transformation agenda. And yeah, it's interesting as well to just reflect on that cross-functional view, whether it has actually helped bring together the view on the possibilities, I guess, that some of these programs of work can open up for organizations. And it sounds like certainly it has honed for some clients we've been speaking to. Thanks, Andy. I think that's a good point to, we've got a poll, so I'm really interested in, for the people who have joined us today, the strategic view of IT in your organizations. I've got a few dimensions here. So I think Andy, you were talking around, just while we open that up and let people uh, put their results in, and we'll come back to those results in a minute. I think, Andy, is there anything you in addition, you sort of mentioned that phase one, that focus on cost and shoring up the current position. There's a few other things here around sort of continuity and security. Any sort of comments on there?
I think those are becoming almost, kind of hygiene factors, to be honest. I mean, certainly the continuity and IT security is obviously at the forefront of people's minds. And I think there's been a number of instances, both kind of consumers and kind of various kind of phishing scandals that have occurred that have meant that IT security is becoming in this digital age more and more important. So I think those are hygiene. I mean, I think the successful businesses are the ones that focus on that second, innovation and growth aspect.
And maybe this is a good point, Kamal, to jump in just on the strategic view around security and continuity. Obviously, with the shift to a lot of work being conducted through digital channels, we're opening up broader vectors here for risk and issues to come into business. Do you have any sort of comment on that area? Oh, Kamal, I think you're just on mute.
Sorry, Ryan. What was the question? I couldn't hear that properly.
Oh, sorry. I was just seeing if you had a comment on around the security and aspect of digital strategies, as a lot of work has moved online and being conducted digitally now. Just the focus in regards to security and continuity and those other risk factors.
Absolutely. So I think that is a great point, Ryan. Now, there is given that there is a lot more activity that is getting transitioned to the digital or the online world, the focus on security has gone up significantly. And especially if you follow the media, there have been some incidences in the past where a number of large organizations have got impacted because of either ransomware or because of challenges or compromise in their IT systems. So the focus has gone up in that area, and also the innovations and the investments that are happening in that area has gone up. So definitely it is becoming a part of it. But I would also agree with what Andy was saying, where I think in a lot of transformations that has become more of a given, and the focus is changing more into how do we actually preserve cash on one hand, and on the other side focus on innovation and growth, so that when we come out of the COVID situation, we are ready to accelerate or grow the business in the way that the organizations had been focusing on. So I think security is a focus, but it is becoming more as a given, and the shift in investment is going more towards innovation and growth, combined with rebalancing the portfolio to manage cost.
Yeah, great. Cool, thanks.
And I think on that, Ryan,
Yep.
I mean, I think when we came out of GFC, there was some empirical evidence that actually said that, or kind of point to the fact that organisations that really put their kind of foot to the metal and accelerated out of it made significant gains in market share versus those competitors that were a bit more stagnant in their activity kind of coming out. So I think at this point in time, kind of organisations should be going, right, how do we go hard out of this crisis, because there's going to be a big delta or opportunity for people to take advantage within their particular kind of competitive set.
Yeah, that's a good. So I might come back to that as well, Andy, just in a moment, as we talk around key programs and prioritization. I think if we just get final votes in on this question, I'm just really curious to see the results from our audience today. So yeah, right. That's a real blend. So there's that security and resiliency domain, and also cost reduction. So yeah, any comments, Tim? I might loop you in on any comments on those results from your perspective.
Yeah, oh, look, I think I agree with Andy around business continuity and security and resilience. Is they are very much like, if you haven't got that in place, then it's a hygiene matter which needs to be sorted out. And I'm sure that's why number 4 there's got a proportion of the votes. In terms of the first two, look, the times we're in now, there's no more pet projects. It's about, or things that are just in the domain of technical people. It's about business value, and obviously growth and cost minimisation are the two common business levers for really driving value. And we're in a time now where IT's got to be able to speak that language if it wants to get the capital to actually make the investment. So yeah, no surprise there at all.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Tim. So I think we'll jump into the next question I had, and that was leading in, I guess, to where a company or an organization is assessing, what are those key initiatives that we do need to pursue given the current state. How does a board, senior management team, what are the kind of typical, and I might go to you, Andy, first on this, like what are the typical kind of questions that are coming up in terms of how you assess whether is this the right initiative, or why is this the right initiative to pursue at this point in time?
I mean, I think it's incumbent on board and exec level to be very forward thinking and what's the long-term strategy for the organization. And I'm not talking 2 to 3 years, I'm talking 5 to 10. Albeit it's difficult to imagine what the business will look like, but I think you've got to be quite thoughtful as to what the kind of the changing kind of landscape might look like. So I think that would be kind of the first point, and what's the business going to look like in that time frame, and then what's the technology that's going to support that type of business into the future. I think more and more industries are starting with technology to intermingle a little bit as well, and what used to be quite a tight industry schematic is actually becoming broader and broader as ecosystems go into each other. And I think in various partnerships, cross-industry partnerships are coming to the fore. So I think thinking about the long term, obviously prioritization is obviously key. What's the capital allocation going to be that the executive or board is going to sign off on? That's obviously key. I think the other thing in terms of that, once you've decided what the priorities are, is how you're going to get there, and that might be a kind of a buy, build, or partner strategy. I mean, certainly in M&A, we're seeing quite a few examples where companies just want to really accelerate and almost a defensive move as well, and do an acquisition to get that technical capability within the confines of their organization. So acqui-hires and that type of acquisition target is becoming more and more the case. And that might be overseas acquirers coming into Australia, acquiring and then taking Australian bit of tech over to into Europe or Asia or wherever. I think the other thing for board, as you look down the waterfall of decision making, is how are we going to execute on it? Do we have the capability? And I suppose that goes into what's the internal talent pool like? Do we have confidence that we have the right people on board? And when we're talking on the execution side of things, when we're talking about fundamentally changing business models through a digital transformation, we certainly had this at Fairfax, whereby publishing had obviously significant industry headwinds, was getting massively disrupted, and there was a big digital transformation around focus on website subscriptions, and what the kind of almost the duality of business models that you're trying to run concurrently. So we had publishing continuing, we had digital that we were building out on an off-site team who was kind of secret squirrel. So kind of things like that, how you actually execute on changing a business model, what's the point at which you're going to do the switching, and how you continue to put resourcing into each of those different streams.
And just on that, Andy, like, do you think the appetite for conducting some of these innovative approaches to developing new products, revenue streams, that kind of thing is accelerated a little bit, or obviously maybe that's dependent on the industry and sector, but do you think, given the circumstances, that has changed?
Yeah, no, I think industries that have got disrupted, it's a given they've had to really look at themselves in the mirror and go, okay, what have we got to change here to be able to survive? What are our competitors doing? And it's not even just competitors, it's relatively kind of new startups that are managing to get traction in particular industries relatively easily. So the competition is coming from each, and it is the responsibility of board and exec to be thinking and really understanding the landscape on those. And I think the last point around execution as an executive, you need to, on any of these big programs, you need to be taking the whole organization kind of along on the journey with you. Otherwise, you just don't have the tailwinds of support. And I think that's just open communication with everybody, them understanding the quantum of capital that's kind of going into or kind of going to support kind of certain projects or programs. And then finally, from a public perspective, I know we were very thoughtful on making sure that the investors were taken on the journey as well, because it's when you're talking about fundamentally looking at different business models, the investors need to be taken on that journey to continue supporting it. So
yeah, no, that's I really like that point around particularly where it is something a new capability or model change to operating model. I think that's being developed, bringing the whole organization. I think that's really key. Tim, I might jump to you on this, given your experience with large transformation projects and programs. Do you have any view on how that has changed in the last few months, and lessons, takeaways for our attendees?
Thanks, Ryan. I always have plenty of views. So Andy's covered off a number of really important points there. So it's probably just worth reiterating some of those, in that we're in recession, we're going into a protracted recession more than likely. Everything Andy's talking about of being aligned to strategy, getting your shot selection right, making sure you got the expertise and the capability in the organisation. It's almost like they're a test for whether you should proceed or not. And if you don't tick all those boxes, the best thing the organisation can do is just stop. Because one of the big things is when we're talking about value and the future of the business, every decision you make has a potential opportunity cost as well. So if you commit resources to something, it means you're not committing them to something else, because we're in a space where it's finite. Probably a lot of the people on the webinar haven't actually worked through a full blown recession. Well, we had the GFC, but it wasn't really a recession. Some of us who've been around long enough have actually seen one in the 90s. And, you know, everything that Andy's talking about is, if you haven't got your act, and most organisations don't do it particularly well, you need to get your act together. Boards and executives need to be on their game. Certainly, IT professionals need to very much align to all those strategic elements and be able to articulate the value to the business. It's really important. But then once you've chosen what you're going to do with your finite resources, then you've got to execute well. There's the business of having territory for hiding mistakes and glossing over things that are blown out. But that's not the time we're in now. You've actually got to be really good, really disciplined. I'm actually trying to remember exactly what your question was, Ryan, but while I'm doing that, I'll just keep talking about one of my hobby horses. So to actually increase, and this is not just an IT projects issue, this is infrastructure, civil engineering, business transformation, IT projects, it's all the same issue. People start with all the right intentions, they do everything Andy's talked about, they've got the strategic alignment, and then they execute poorly. And the IT fraternity are probably better than their engineering friends for success and fail rates, depending how you define success and failure. But, and it's probably jumping ahead a little bit, but 30 odd years of business improvement, the number one thing people should be focused on is standardizing how they do things. Every project's a bit different, but actually governance, project controls, administration, scoping, all that stuff is stock standard. And if you haven't got standard ways of doing things, you need to get onto it quick, smart. So, otherwise, you're going to destroy a lot of it.
That is a great point, Tim, and that actually is a good, because I want to talk around risk management when that decision is made to proceed on a program of work, and what does, particularly given the circumstances where some of these decisions for firms, you know, there is an element of risk. There's maybe not much room to maneuver, so successful execution is really critical. What does effective risk management and program governance look like given the current environment when we pursue one of these digital initiatives?
So I think we can all talk to it, but I'll have a first go at it. I think Andy was talking fairly quickly about a number of things, but he actually touched on numerous things that are really critical. And it's probably the number one risk in this space is the issue around people. People are complex, and you can't just assume that you've got their hearts and minds because it's the right thing to do. So you've got to manage that side, and you talked about that. It needs a combination of change management as well as leadership. It's articulating why this is important. It's understanding what the dependencies are, the interactions, cross-functional, what Andy's also mentioned. You've covered a lot of territory, Andy. You're doing a great job here. So all of that, you know, that's the stuff that you have to get right. Governance. Governance is often misunderstood that, okay, we've formed a steering committee, so we've done governance. That's one part of it. You need to have the controls, the management of issues and risks, and have the appropriate reporting. Like a 100-page progress report is not very helpful. It needs to be presented in a form that people can digest it. And it's like business people, your business executives are not IT experts. So if it's not written in plain English, send it back. So, you know, it's get down to fundamentals. You know, it's not rocket science. It's just getting back to basics and doing the basics really well.
So
And just to add to that,
yeah,
just to add to that, Tim, I think a big part of reporting is not only around how the project is going, but also the value it's adding. And I think that's a big shift that's happening in where projects 10 years back used to be a big waterfall methodology where they would actually have a 2-year roadmap of activity or a series of activities, and then the business will start seeing some benefits. I think that thinking has now shifted into more modular delivery, more agile based delivery, and that's where there is a big focus on not only doing the work but also adding value back to the business. And as a part of that governance, and also to motivate and keep the business engaged, it's around reporting on what value is getting delivered. And I think that becomes a big part of not only keeping the business together on the project, but also making sure that communication and that governance is delivering towards what you're committed to.
Spot on. The other thing I'll add to that is a really good point that Kamal brings up, and I'll just put it a different way. Cost is a lag indicator, and when you're governing projects, you've got to be identifying the lead indicators, which Kamal's alluded to, but that's what you're governing with, not with cost. Cost,
yes,
you do the right things right, and cost takes care of itself.
Yep.
Yeah, no,
I think
that's fantastic.
the only other things I'd probably add, Ryan, is and we talked about governments, but I think it's just the cadence, the operating rhythm is important for everybody to understand in the organisation. I think once that kind of gets set and everybody's aligned, that's really important. It's just the timing. I think the other thing is just the fundamentals of accountability and making sure someone is kind of on the hook. Too often I've seen large teams and everybody's like that. So I think having the point people actually kind of breeding that accountability is critical as well.
Yeah, great. And I think these are all great insights, and it just leads in my mind to where I want to go on the discussion here around now this digital as a priority, because for many organizations, we're really seeing digital capabilities help us solve some of these problems and mitigate some of these risks, and really deliver on that level of visibility amongst key stakeholders involved in these strategic programs of work. So, Tim, I want to just jump back and given you are actually in Melbourne at the moment, in a very I guess where there's restrictions on where you can go, and that's obviously direct impacts on work as well. So I wanted to just give it to you to maybe talk to around digitalization and remote work, and what kind of investments companies, organizations are having to make as a result of that, and changes really in general.
So a loaded question, Ryan. No, working remotely all the time sort of sucks. But in reality, I think we're moving to a place where there's going to be a combination of remote work and the traditional mode of working. So it's not even just remote, it's combination, that the flexibility and agility that sometimes we're working in one place, sometimes we're working in separate places. It opens up opportunities for our business in particular that, and I think most business or a lot of businesses have thought about this stuff for years, and they've had to transition to it in a matter of weeks. So yeah, it's wearing a bit thin in Melbourne at the moment, but it's I guess the consideration, and once again I think Andy's touched on it without necessarily elaborating, is you got to be careful that you don't digitize your old business model. You've got to start thinking about, what do we want to be? Put the customer at the center and really design around that, and design take away all the inefficiencies and the fat in the system and really streamline it and digitize for that rather than sort of retrofitting a digitization, which is a bit clunky and doesn't quite work. So, and if the way we do things doesn't fit in with that, then let's really challenge either how we're going to work or whether digital's the full solution. Or so it's it's those sorts of challenges, and there's not one size fits all, but people got to be open to challenge at the moment, and it's not you're going to make it not personal. It's just because we've done it that way doesn't mean that's the way we're going to do it, or just because the available technologies mean this is what we should be doing. If that doesn't work for our business, then let's be adult about it. So I don't know if Kamal's nodding away. He's probably got some other insights to add there.
And I might just Kamal, one moment. I'm just going to open a poll because I'm keen whilst we keep talking for our attendees on the call. Investments that your organisation has made during this downturn, and there could be multiple. So, Kamal, I'll hand back to you whilst we get everyone to put some votes in, and we'll return to these in a moment.
Sure. Now, look, I had a very short comment, Tim and Ryan. It was digital is not the priority. I think the businesses have to. Businesses are becoming digital is becoming a part of business. You can't separate digital from business. They're becoming one and the same in a lot of cases. Now, you look at industry after industry, and the environment has changed so much that without having that underlying digital capabilities, it's very hard to actually operate these days. So be it remote working, which we are all getting forced into because of circumstance, that is a big example where digital has made it happen. Then if you look at process automation that you have in here, again, processes by themselves have been there for a number of years. It's just how they get executed with robotics process automation, machine learning, and intelligent automation that's going in. It's giving a new meaning to what digital processes are going to be. Same thing goes with data and insights and how you link it back to decision making. So I think in a lot of cases, digital used to be a strategy, but now digital is the business that people are in. So I think that's a big mind shift change, and that's forcing a different way of thinking of how do we bring some of these capabilities in the business.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Kamal. Andy, anything to add at the moment?
I think just kind of building on what the guys have said. I mean, certainly we often see this when there's an acquisition that gets executed and an integration project. And I always say that it's a great opportunity just to reimagine what the organization, kind of the merged organization should look like or could look like. So I think, you've got an M&A transaction there that's been a catalyst for reimagining. I think in the same way, this crisis has probably been another catalyst for kind of reimagining kind of what kind of the organisation should look like. But I think it's an uncomfortable and it's a difficult exercise to carry out. But for the long-term view of the business and getting that additional competitive advantage, then it's critical to do it.
And I think we'll just close off the poll now. If we've got some good results, if we just have a look. So remote work capabilities, process optimization, RPA. So
and I think this is a very interesting insight, Ryan. So I think if you remove remote working capabilities, because that's a lot of the organizations are being forced into investing or building capability in this area just because of we can't go into offices. But if I look at the other three, I think they all go hand in hand. So I think this whole focus around automating the processes using what's coming out from the robotics world, using data better, and then migrating to cloud, which is more around just getting rid of the legacy applications which have been holding businesses back, and leveraging the cloud to give scalability, faster sort of functionality, and just quick onboarding. I think those are the things where a lot of organizations that I'm talking to are focusing. So I think this is a great insight from the polls.
And Carl, I might just continue with the question that I have here with you. With some of these initiatives, obviously they're actually as well being delivered by teams remotely. Do we get the same outcomes as if we're in the office, or how do we assess the cost, the productivity differences in that delivery with a changed delivery mode?
And I think if I look at where we have all evolved to, I think the first couple of months of this crisis, there was an impact on productivity. There was a lot of busyness in everyone's schedule, but that busyness was probably holding things together, making sure that the teams were engaged, and that communication was happening, given that everyone was forced to working in a different environment. But I think after that first dip in productivity, from there onwards, things have actually picked up significantly. Where if you look at the travel time, that has come down. People have been able to sort of integrate their work and life a lot better, and a number of things have sort of come together to help people stay focused, stay productive, and deliver the outcome more seamlessly. And especially now with the remote working capabilities, being able to work with teams overseas or in a different location, that's giving that extra boost in productivity, because you're not only working in the Australian time zone, but you're able to extend that working time zone either through a couple of hours, towards the New Zealand side, or if you're moving towards offshore locations, it gives you additional 5 hours to that working day. So with that ability to work effectively in your local geography, plus leverage capabilities outside of geography, it's having a significant impact on productivity and the way teams have been able to deliver.
And I'm curious just to explore that, and I might go to you, Andy, on this question. Just as we think around capability, and particularly those that have been able to roll out and implement these capabilities versus those that already have the foundations, do you think we're seeing a bit of a divide in those who are now maybe a little bit ahead in terms of being able to respond to the economic situation versus those that had to really shore things up, both in terms of finances and also technology coming into this?
Well, certainly, I think there's definitely been a kind of bifurcation of how different companies have kind of dealt with it, and I think in certain industries, and you've seen this in a number of areas, whereby the more forward-thinking, innovative, they can get that extra. But it's not even as though it's a little bit of a competitive edge. It's kind of a huge edge, because of their kind of digital skill set internally. So yes, I think, and it just means that the people that are slightly behind the eight ball have to kind of work a little bit harder, get kind of some additional talent kind of in the tent, to be competitive. Because it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. People want to join businesses that are kind of very forward-thinking, innovative, and it just kind of breeds this kind of element of success.
Yeah, I think, well, I guess an extension to that, and Tim, maybe you have a view on this, is those companies that perhaps did have to rush to deploy some of this capability, maybe in non-tech native businesses, have they been able to catch up? Are there still challenges there? Did that impact other areas of delivery in terms of strategic programs?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag, as I'm sure you expect. And some, yeah, look, Kamal was describing it a bit, that there was a bit of a, initially it was just, you know, circle the wagons and make sure we can survive this threat, and that some organisations did that very quickly. Some organisations are still working through that, to be honest. So, and it's probably, it was uncertain times, and while it feels like uncertain times still, it's sort of stabilised a bit. So people, and Kamal was saying, this, you know, it's not going back to the old ways. This is sort of how the world is, and this is how we operate. I guess for me, and it's look, people feel uncomfortable when we say things like this, but Australia's got a lot of closeted industries that haven't had real global competition, so they're not sort of battle hardened, and this is what's coming now, that you've got to actually, you've got to sharpen up, and you've got to be better at what you do, and you know, there's no easy way to do that. You've actually got to have everyone rolling up the sleeves, digging in, and sort of having the straight talk that, you know, some of these things we shouldn't be doing, and shouldn't be doing might be, we need to find a different way to do it. And sort of one of the, I guess, for the IT community and the projects community, one of the challenges I'd put out there is, rather than just talk about, you know, how do we digitize how we've done things in the past. Andy's talked about finite human resources and finite capital available. If we can start to reimagine not only how we might do business more effectively, but how might we deliver projects more effectively, and how do we, you know, let's challenge ourselves to say, you know, something that would have taken 3 months, 6 months, how do we do it in half the time or a third of the time? Now, you may not achieve that, but if you're aspiring to that, you're going to do a lot better than you were doing 6 or 12 months ago. So, you know, we've all got to challenge ourselves. These are interesting times we're in now. So, not just the other people who have to change, everyone needs to change.
Yeah. And I think that's a fantastic segue to my next topic area, which is around cost and effectiveness. And Kamal, I might jump to you on this, because we've sort of covered a bit of the why and the what, and this is getting into sort of the how, where we do have a change in operating model. There's this rush which we've sort of been going through to implement the right tools and capabilities. But what are some strategies in how we do this in a cost-effective way while still getting those outcomes?
Sure, Ryan, and I'll respond to Tim's challenge first for the IT community, but I'm sitting here representing the CIO communities and their way of thinking. So I'll probably challenge or comment on that, Tim. So I think this crisis or this pandemic has actually changed the role of a CIO within the business, and I think in a lot of cases it's for the CIOs or the IT to actually now start thinking differently in terms of how they engage with the business also. And I think one of the topics that we covered in our previous webinar was around managing IT as a business. So it's no longer a support function which has a set budget and it has to deliver set number of projects in a year, but I think the CIOs have to start managing IT as a business. So what that means is they have to start becoming more customer centric. And in this case, the customer is the business, the customer are the real customers of that company. So it's about starting to understand, starting to collaborate, and starting to sort of be together with the business to deliver the outcomes that's required. So that's the first thing, which is look at the business you're supporting as your customer. The second one is around value. Now, I think gone are the days where it was a set budget, as I said, and a set number of projects. Now, because of the finite capital and finite resources, it's around how do we prioritize or reprioritize our portfolio so that we can deliver the best value for the business. So it's changing it from a cost equation to more of a value equation. And then the last one is around having some structured performance approach, which is let's look at what you're delivering, measure that, and report on that in a much more structured manner. Like any business, you would be reporting on what your the customer acquisitions have been, what your cost year-on-year cost has been. I think when IT starts working as a business, or they start looking at as to what are the key metrics they need to report on, they start capturing the information and start reporting it back to the business. So I think if you look at the fundamental pillars around treating the business as a customer and engaging with them, having a structured approach around value management, cost optimization, and then having an approach towards measuring and reporting as to what's getting delivered, I think those three pillars will reposition IT, and it will reposition how the projects are taken on board and how they are delivered.
And I might jump in here because we've actually had a question come through, Kamal, and this talks to more the people side of things. I'll just read out. What are businesses doing to manage the fatigue of constant at work at home in the new normal, where the work life is getting blurred? I think we talked previously that there's been some productivity benefits, but I think this question is getting to perhaps some of those longer term things, impacts that maybe we haven't seen play out yet or are just starting to.
Absolutely, and I think there's this whole study being done in terms of impact of video conferences on just the mental health of people. And I think given that all of us are spending so much time in front of a screen, it's becoming a real issue that we need to all start thinking about. Now, I think the methods of coping could be very, very different, but I think some of the approaches that are getting discussed is, it's around having a little bit of a discipline around what your day would look like. So when you have to switch off, you switch off. No mobile phone, no screen time, no emails pinging on your mobile. I think it's around having a little bit of discipline in terms of what is work and what is not work. So that's one part of it that is getting discussed a lot more. The second part is around forcing people to do things differently. Even if you're in front of a screen, can you actually go and do something which is mindfulness, or do something which is a trivia discussion, or have some break in the schedule, so that it doesn't become a monotonous series of work. But even if you're in front of a screen, you have actually got logical breaks introduced in there, so that you can start thinking about differently, start focusing a little bit on yourself, and ensure that that whole mental health equation is brought as a part of the conversation. So look, it is going to be difficult, but I think a lot of organizations are focusing on that, and it is going to be what works for individuals and what works for the circumstance that you are working in.
So Ryan, could I just add something quickly to that? So everything Kamal's saying is right, and it's not one size fits all, but there's a range of things, and routine is really important. And I think Kamal touched on that, but that can be crucial. What it does do is you start to get or creates the opportunity you can distinguish between activity and productivity. And everyone's days are filled with a lot of activity, a lot of things that we've got to do, especially administration. Sometimes it's just you've got to be involved with things. But when we have this mode of operation, we actually start to think, okay, what's important, what's not important. And when we identify what's not important, it becomes a candidate for something we don't do in the future. So it's worth just keeping track of some of that. And people might be very surprised how much activity there is, which is not productive. So, food for thought.
Andy, any comments on people and those aspects to the question?
No, I think what the guys have said, kind of echo that. It's everybody used to talk about kind of work-life balance. It's now work-life blend, and I think it does come down to discipline and taking kind of some me time out. And a lot of people think, oh, I'm just being selfish, but in reality, you're going to be better at your job for taking that time out ultimately. So,
cool.
And I think in terms of kind of just general, team environment, just being conscious of everybody else's predicament, and that people do handle it differently. So,
and just being the token Victorian on the webinar. And one
we
thing
don't want to hear it, Tim. We don't want to hear you whinging.
No. When the sun is shining, which it often is here, as we all know, in winter in particular, like there's nothing quite like half an hour walk in the sun to break up the day. And it's those little things that can make a hell of a difference. So, it doesn't have to be grandiose.
Cool. And we are edging close to 2 o'clock. If people do need to go somewhere, this is being recorded, so you can always catch the end bit. Just a call out, I guess, for any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Whilst we just wait to see if there's any more questions, maybe we'll just do a quick round the room in 60 seconds on final views on what else CIOs, CFOs, CEOs can do to ensure that their strategic programs of work are successful given this complex, uncertain environment.
Well, I'm happy to lead out of the blocks, give the other guys a bit of think time. Look, I think we've covered it. I think it's just really important for everyone to be thinking, what's value adding and what's not value adding. Eliminate what's not really required. And sometimes, some of the people stuff is actually value adding because it motivates people. But I guess my number one message out of this is, given that we're moving into recessionary times, the biggest driver of operational improvement is going to be to standardize. So the more you can standardize, whether it's your data, whether it's your program management, whether it's your other business processes, that dwarfs everything else in all my experience of business improvement. So that would be my main takeaway for people.
Awesome. I love it. Thanks, Tim.
Cool. I'm happy to go next, Ryan. So I think 60 seconds, you made it harder. But I think the key message that I would want to leave, if I take the CIO sort of perspective in the conversation, digital is a big driver of transformation and what's the art of possible. But I think synthesizing the fad from what the reality is, I think that's critical. And also looking at all of digital in the context of where the business is heading and what is going to add value. I think that's the role that the CIOs have to play. Educate the business, help them make the right decision, and just make sure that the value equation is in the center of all the decision and the conversations that they are having.
And then, from me, I'll probably just kind of harp back to the alignment with the long-term strategy, and I think there's a lot of companies out there that haven't actually kind of pinned down what their longer term strategy is in the first place. So I think that is the first port of call, and then everything should really kind of follow behind that. But that alignment is crucial.
Excellent. That's I think that's fantastic. It's like different perspectives, but I think that they all make sense in their respective ways, both across strategy delivery and prioritization of key activities. So I think that's a bit of a wrap for our discussion. So I really want to thank everyone today for tuning in to our panel discussion. Thank you, Tim, Andrew, and Kamal for your insights on program management and just really everything that touches on for the business, given where we are at the moment. We've got here on the screen just contact details. So look, feel free to people on the call, reach out with your questions to any of us there. We've got the phone numbers, email addresses, all there for you to keep in touch. And if you do, this session has been recorded as well, so this will be up on the web and I think linked in the follow-up email as well. So yeah, I think that's, and a little feedback survey was going to pop up after this as well. So it'd be great to have your views on this session as well. But I think that's a wrap. So thanks, guys, and have a lovely afternoon, everybody.
Thanks, Ryan. Good job,
everyone.
Bye.
All right. Thanks.